positions, with laborers starting at $23 and up based on experience. Constructors has immediate job openings for laborers, mechanics, bridge builders, operators, and drivers. Start your new career today. Constructors offers great pay, health, dental, and vision insurance, paid time off, paid holidays, and so much more. Join the crew today and be a part of Nebraska's oldest paving company dating back to 1908. For a complete list of openings and to apply online, visit constructorslincoln.com.
It's getting nicer outside, but it's still hit or miss in the spring on golf weather. Not at Double Eagle Golf. You're home for always 72-degree weather with no wind. Book a bay with some friends for a weekend or come by for golf and happy hour on a weekday. Spring leagues are underway, but stay tuned for info on indoor golf tournaments and book your bay for after the spring game in late April. That's all at Double Eagle Golf inside the Kinetic Sports Complex on West O Street. Online at doubleeagle.golf. Spring is a time of new beginnings and trying new things. If you haven't tried Furious Cheese Spread yet, the time is now. For parties for St. Patrick's Day and Easter, or celebrating the NCAA tournament with friends, there's no better dip to bring everyone together and celebrate something from Nebraska. Get to your local grocery store today and load up on Furious Cheese Spread. No event or party is complete without it on your table.
Join On the Block and Old School live from Scissors and Scotch on 30th and Yankee Hill on Thursday, June 6th to celebrate their grand opening. Feel better instantly with a beard trim, haircut, or a traditional shave courtesy of the experienced and professional barbers at Scissors and Scotch. Stick around after your cut and enjoy a beverage in their cozy bar area, and don't worry, there's more than just Scotch. Spend your afternoon with Scissors and Scotch at 93.7 The Ticket, live on location June 6th from 2 to 6 p.m.
Spring in Nebraska brings green grass and warmer weather, but it also brings severe storms which can cause damage to your home. Meadowlark Exterior specializes in hail, storm, and wind damage restoration, as well as roofing, siding, and gutters for commercial or residential buildings. Meadowlark Exteriors focuses on fine craftsmanship and proves that in their attention to detail. They offer free roof inspections and estimates and insurance claim assistance, serving the Lincoln and Omaha surrounding areas. Call today at 402-875-2956 or go to meadowlarkexteriors.com.
Nebco is hiring CDL drivers for ready-mixed concrete, Husker concrete, and Beatrice concrete. Nebco offers great pay, medical and retirement benefits, paid time off, and we pay for CDL training. Apply today to earn an average total compensation of $50,000 to $60,000 your first year driving. From Nebco's beginning in 1908, it's the employees that have formed the company's solid foundation. Start your career today. Visit nebcoinc.com. That's NEBCOINC.com.
Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits is your place in North Lincoln to go for all your needs in wine, spirits, and beer. They also have a large variety of cigars in their walk-in humidor, and they have a top-notch walk-in, temperature-controlled, high-end wine room. Plus, you can enjoy free samples from their tasting bar. There's only one place to go for all your needs for spirits and cigars: Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits on North 27th Street in Lincoln.
Do you need motivation to get to the gym on the weekend or even in general? Tune into the Movement Hour each Saturday from 10 to 11 a.m. Movement Academy owner Robert Kuhlman will host the show as he introduces new ways to stay in shape. The Movement Hour, every Saturday morning from 10 to 11 a.m. on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
This is On the Block with Strick and Austin. Nebraska Basketball Hall of Famer and 9-year NBA vet, Eric Strickland.
Strickland for three! And you're going to go out of here as the Big 8 tournament champion.
Middle school basketball coaching legend and Duke basketball shooting coach in his mind, Austin Oerman. Coming at you live from the heart of Lincoln, America. On air and online at theticketfm.com. Presented by Nebco. This is On the Block with Strick and Austin.
Welcome in a Wednesday edition of On the Block, brought to you by Nebco. If you're looking to start your new career today, check them out. Hiring for 26 companies here across Nebraska at nebcoinc.com. I'm Austin Oerman. No Strick today. Not really 10-day injured list. And probably back tomorrow. He should be. He told me he'd be back tomorrow. But yeah, gave him the day off today to rest and recover. That is all right. I'll bring you through these next 90 minutes. What's on tap? We will talk some Husker basketball. A lot of news surrounding that program here recently. A little bit of Husker football as well. But hey, we're on time. We have Evan Bland of the Omaha World Herald with us here on our Allo VIP line, where they understand the importance of exceptional service with local heart. Evan, Nick Sainer and I in the happy hour spent plenty of time discussing Husker baseball in the happenings. Last night started so positively. Nebraska strikes first. They score a first inning run. They get 2 outs in the bottom of the first, and then everything fell apart. What happened?
Well, the Sunfield happened. They had Creighton hit a ball to the left that Clay Bradford kind of looked up into the sun to navigate, and it dropped off his glove. And then they had an infield pop-up that went down as a single, but was a play that Nebraska would think that they have to make. And then, yeah, I mean, you get the 2 outs, and 4 straight scoring hits later, Creighton's up 6-1. And Tyner Horn has nearly as many unearned runs on the season as the rest of the Nebraska pitching staff combined. So, I mean, that's just how quickly it fell apart. And that set the tone for the game. And Nebraska got back within 2 or 3 runs a couple of times, but it was just too much to come back from. So, Nebraska was kind of confounded afterwards how it were to play out the way that it did. A couple of bad innings, and Will Bolt said maybe in hindsight they should have started Caleb Clark, who has 3 scoreless innings in relief, but it just didn't happen. And just the momentum that Creighton has in the midweek and against Nebraska versus Nebraska's own struggles in those weekday games all kind of snowballed, and it was more of the same, and unfortunately so for the Big Red.
5 unearned runs in that first inning, and a game Nebraska ends up losing by 4. Do the math there. It would, obviously butterfly effect and all that wouldn't work out, but the numbers are what the numbers are. From your chair, Evan, watching that game, would Caleb Clark, have made a difference as a starter? What did he do against Creighton that maybe Ty Horn wasn't able to from a pitch selection standpoint?
I think Caleb Clark is a guy who, you think about his career at Nebraska, he was in the rotation to start last season as a freshman and this season, and kind of fell out. And he's had a few pretty good appearances in a row now. This was one of his better ones. And the key for him has always been just throwing strikes. When he's struggling, he's issuing free passes, and guys are getting on base, and the balls are hittable when they are over the plate. And he kind of broke it down last night, said he's been working with Rob Childress, the pitching coach, quite a bit on mechanics and stepping off differently on the mound and things like that. So I think that's always been sort of the key for him, has been, can he command the stuff that he has? And in this case, he did, and it's hard to say if it would have been that way in a tie game versus being down 5 runs immediately in the bottom of the first. But, you talk about midweeks being opportunities for guys to develop and kind of figure out maybe who can join that circle of trust in key moments down the line. I think Caleb Clark certainly is on that list for Nebraska. They've always been a believer in him from an intangible perspective, very similar to Drew Christo in a lot of ways, really. Just a really competitive kid, leader, good person, good stuff, and it's been about the command. And so, maybe he does settle into more of a high leverage role for Nebraska moving forward, and maybe that game against Creighton was a big part of it.
Nebraska swept by Creighton, 0-3 this year. Your coworker Tom Chattel had a column that you mentioned. I think his idea a couple times he put in writing about getting rid of midweek games. I highly doubt, like Tom said, that's going to happen. But what do you make of his proposal to make Nebraska Creighton a true weekend series? Do you think that would be something that these 2 teams and programs would be interested in doing?
I mean, I think it's a fun idea in theory. I don't think it's ever going to happen. One, because those weekend series are too important. And when you talk about building out a non-conference resume, you want to travel and you want to play winning programs and from warmer weather climates and in other conferences. And so I don't think you'll ever see those schools spend one of those weekends against each other. And the other thing is, if the midweeks do continue, then you have to have some quality opponents to play that are within driving distance, where guys don't miss school and travel is a lot easier. And so, especially where Nebraska is located geographically, there just aren't a ton of those options. And so, I mean, Creighton's an important piece of that midweek schedule. And you look back at the game last night, and yeah, they lose, and it was disappointing for Husker fans, but ultimately they actually rose a spot in the RPI because it goes down as a quad 1 road loss. So those are valuable where they are. I don't think they have any interest in moving it. Hypothetically speaking, I do think it would be interesting to see how those teams would measure up on the weekends. And you look at these two teams specifically, right now, Nebraska's strength is its starting pitching. When it has Brett Sears on the mound on a Friday, when it has Mason McConaughey on Saturday, right now Will Walsh has been pitching well on Sunday. That's absolutely advantaged Nebraska in this current situation, whereas the way that they're meeting now, Creighton is by far the more comfortable team sort of putting it together as they go along, playing matchups, pitching in a pitcher here and there to cover an inning here, an inning there. And so the midweeks are tricky because in some ways they showcase a team's depth maybe a little bit more, but they're also not always indicative of sort of their high-end ability, as we see in scores every week on Tuesdays and Wednesdays throughout the country. So, yeah, I think it would be fun to see, but ultimately I just don't see it happening because they're too valuable to play each other in the midweek.
Evan, you're not on the selection committee, but I'm going to ask you to put your selection committee hat on here. A 7-10 April for Nebraska, not ideal from the Huskers standpoint, but the RPI and the non-conference strength of schedule are still pretty solid, all things considered. Are the metrics in a good enough spot for Nebraska to maybe snag a 2 seed still, or are we talking about Nebraska right on that kind of 2-3 line as it looks toward regional play at the end of May?
I mean, I think if the playoffs started right now, yeah, they're absolutely a solid 2, and I still think they're trending that way. I think you'd probably lose multiple weekends down the stretch to lose that. I mean, as much as the midweeks have been a bugaboo for Nebraska, I mean, even if they were to lose to Kansas State at home tonight, I mean, Kansas State's a top 30 or so RPI team. That doesn't ding you too much. If you were to lose to South Dakota State in your last one at home next week, that would knock you down a few pegs for sure. But you know, it's been the power league schools that have given Nebraska troubles on these weekdays. So I think barring a loss to South Dakota State and maybe 2 weekend losses in their next 3, I still think Nebraska's in pretty solid positioning, you know, just because of the work that they did in February and March. You look at the Big Ten as a whole, you know, they're the only school really with a strong at-large argument at this point, even though they're a game behind Illinois and Purdue. Like, those are schools that right now are still probably going to have to win the Big Ten tournament to get into the postseason. So, I think, you know, Nebraska's probably in a pretty good spot, barring a big time collapse. And again, if their strength is starting pitching, and I think that it is, then that should show up on these weekends, especially against, you know, a couple of these last couple opponents that aren't necessarily juggernauts by any means, with Minnesota and then Michigan State, both on the road. Those are series Nebraska will be favored in. And, you know, I think if they take care of business, even just winning the series, you're still in pretty good shape to play into June.
Nebraska hasn't played Illinois or Purdue, right, Evan? They missed them completely this year?
That's right.
Is that advantage Nebraska, or would it be nice to have, you know, a series left against one of those teams, you think?
Well, I mean, I guess you can make the argument either way. I would say when I look at who they've played, Illinois and Purdue, they've played, I suppose, more of the teams that you would think would be finished toward the bottom of the standings. I think they do have, well, first of all, they do have a series against each other coming up still. And then I think they have relatively difficult schedules here for the stretch run. So Purdue is the one that really surprises me. I mean, they kind of stuck to their script of a soft non-conference schedule. And sometimes that can work. Sometimes when you do that, you start winning games and you build up momentum and confidence and you kind of take off. And I kind of feel like maybe that's where Purdue is right now a little bit. Illinois was a team coming in that had a bunch of turnover. It was kind of hard to figure out what they are. And I still think the meat of their conference season is still ahead as well. So I believe they had a pretty nice midweek win over Indiana State last night. That was a ranked team that they beat. So there's some ability there for sure. But I would also say when you look at the standings, Nebraska is in a 3-way tie for third. It's a little bit more top heavy than it's tended to be at this point in the year. So usually history would say that you got to win 16 or 17 league games out of 24 to be the league champ in the regular season. That number might be a little higher this year, just given how many teams have started well here past the midway point in the season.
We're talking with Evan Bland of the Omaha World Herald here on our Allo VIP line. Evan, let's switch gears to Husker football. Spring game happening on Saturday. Obviously, quarterbacks are the big, talking point here. I'm going to skip straight to Heinrich Haarberg, though. What did you make of his performance? Did you think he looked better, more in control, mechanics more consistent than last year? How do you assess his performance from Saturday?
Yeah, he had his moments for sure. The throw that he had to Ja'Cory Barney down the sideline was impressive. It had some touch and some accuracy to it. I don't know. I suppose his throwing motion was a little bit shorter. It's kind of hard to judge that in a spring game setting all the time, but it did seem maybe it was a little bit more compact and concise. I felt like the thing that stood out to me about him was just his explosiveness as a runner. It was a reminder to me that even if he's not the quarterback, there has to be a spot for him somewhere in the offense. It was a reminder of why he caught a pass at Minnesota last year and why there was talk a year ago about, being an H-back or something else. He's explosive, he's big, he can hit you. And while I think there is probably room for him in that quarterback room, given what he did last year and his skill set, I also think maybe you're going to have to be a little bit creative with him. And if Dylan Raiola is your starter, I think Haarberg has shown enough in terms of speed and explosiveness and the rest that maybe he could have a spot in that offense regardless moving forward.
All of the quarterbacks didn't face a lot of pressure. Of course, Matt Rule says that the touchdown to Thomas Fidone, he probably would have ruled a sack. Jack Waukee or Luke Longville, one of them took a sack at the end of the game. Evan, I didn't have anything major stand out on the offensive and defensive lines. What were some of the takeaways you had from the battle in the trenches?
Yeah, it was hard, right? Because 2/5 of your offensive line really didn't play in Bryce Benhart and Turner Corcoran. Mm-hmm. They were out. Ben Scott as well. So really, you could say 3/5 potentially. And then on the defensive side, Ty Robinson and Nash Heltmaker weren't in either. So again, not because of injury or anything, just because they were veteran guys and they're trying to, conserve their bodies and let the younger guys get some action. But I would agree. I didn't think there was a ton that stood out either way. I think the younger guys that we saw on both sides, were the guys that we expected to see. I didn't feel like the defense in general was all that disruptive. Mm-hmm. And maybe again, that's because there were a lot of key guys at all levels that were sitting out. So maybe that was the reason, but you look at the stat sheet afterwards, right? And there's the right side of the stat sheet for defenders. And if you've got pass breakups or interceptions or tackles for loss or things like that, and you see a bunch of numbers on that side, and it was pretty blank on that side. So, I think some of that's again because it was a younger group. And I think too, you can credit the offensive line, even with some of the guys that were sitting out. It's a veteran unit now. A lot of those guys have been there for 2 or 3 years and have a pretty good sense of the system. So maybe ultimately it's a good thing that there wasn't, something that stood out markedly either way. It's probably a good sign, certainly for the offense, that they were able to put the pass rush at bay. And then, on the other side too, I think you could make an argument that it was good as well. So yeah, I don't know that there were any huge grand takeaways other than it sort of confirmed what we knew and was a reminder that the real difference makers, or at least a lot of them, were on the sidelines.
Hey, speaking about sidelines and real difference makers, Evan, Nebraska switching to the west sideline. How about that?
First of all, amazing segue. Second of all, yes, that was something that Trev Alberts had kind of indicated about a year ago that maybe that was something that could happen. Matt Rules talked about that a little bit. It makes a lot of sense, right? Just the idea that opposing coaches in the press box, as it has been, they could look right on to that east sideline and see the signs and see what Nebraska is communicating in. And granted, some of that's changed now with the helmet technology and all the rest. But, you think back to the Michigan game last year, too, when it was a 90-degree day and Nebraska's cooking there on the east side and Michigan's there 30 to 40 degrees cooler. And Jim Harbaugh tells Trev Alberts afterwards, maybe you guys should think about switching sidelines. So I think all that combined with the fact that Nebraska is now coming out of that northeast tunnel for the tunnel walk, it just makes a lot of sense that now would be the time to make that switch. And, I know one of the reasons they haven't has been because of space limitations on that west side. It's a little bit of a narrower sideline than on the other side. But, I think ultimately just the competitive advantage of it made it worth Nebraska's while to go ahead and make that happen this season.
It was kind of weird seeing the team come out from that northeast corner and then half of them peel off to the same sideline. That's just not as aesthetically pleasing. So to give them an actual runway to the west sideline, yeah, I think it only made sense. Evan, as always, appreciate your time. We'll look forward to reading you on Husker baseball tonight and catching up next week.
Thanks, Austin. See ya.
Evan joined us on our VIP line, brought to you by Aloe Fiber, where they understand the importance of exceptional service with local heart. Big thanks to Aloe also for sponsoring channel 961. It's up there on the TV to my left. If you're an Aloe subscriber all across this great state of Nebraska, type in 961 and boom, all your 93.7 The Ticket content is there. If you're sitting at home, the laptop's not handy, you only have a desktop, whatever it is, that's right. We're not just radio stars, we're TV stars as well, or something like that. Thank you for tuning in here to On the Block. I am Austin Oerman. When we get back, we will wrap up hour one of this show with some Major League Baseball headlines. I'm wearing my Royals shirt, repping it proudly. They are on the brick and mortar right now over the air. Last I checked, it was no score through one inning. See if I can get my page to refresh here. It is, still nothing headed to the top of the fourth. Seth Lugo on the hill for the Royals, Chris Bassett for the Blue Jays. We'll talk a little Royals. We will talk Bumblebees, and we'll talk a big brawl out at the Brewers Stadium. All that and more as we continue On the Block here on 93.7 The Ticket. Constructors is now hiring for all positions, with laborers starting at $23 and up based on experience. Constructors has immediate job openings for laborers, mechanics, bridge builders, operators, and drivers. Start your new career today. Constructors offers great pay, health, dental, and vision insurance, paid time off, paid holidays, and so much more. Join the crew today and be a part of Nebraska's oldest paving company dating back to 1908. For a complete list of openings and to apply online, visit constructorslincoln.com.
It's getting nicer outside, but it's still hit or miss in the spring on golf weather. Not at Double Eagle Golf. You're home for always 72-degree weather with no wind. Book a bay with some friends for a weekend or come by for golf and happy hour on a weekday. Spring leagues are underway, but stay tuned for info on indoor golf tournaments and book your bay for after the spring game in late April. That's all at Double Eagle Golf inside the Kinetic Sports Complex on West O Street. Online at doubleeagle.golf. Spring is a time of new beginnings and trying new things. If you haven't tried Fuhrer's cheese spread yet, the time is now. For parties for St. Patrick's Day and Easter, or celebrating the NCAA tournament with friends, there's no better dip to bring everyone together and celebrate something from Nebraska. Get to your local grocery store today and load up on Fuhrer's cheese spread. No event or party is complete without it on your table.
Join On the Block and Old School live from Scissors and Scotch on 30th and Yankee Hill on Thursday, June 6th to celebrate their grand opening. Feel better instantly with a beard trim, haircut, or a traditional shave courtesy of the experienced and professional barbers at Scissors and Scotch. Stick around after your cut and enjoy a beverage in their cozy bar area, and don't worry, there's more than just Scotch. Spend your afternoon with Scissors and Scotch at 93.7 The Ticket, live on location June 6th from 2 to 6 p.m.
Spring in Nebraska brings green grass and warmer weather, but it also brings severe storms which can cause damage to your home. Meadowlark Exterior specializes in hail, storm, and wind damage restoration, as well as roofing, siding, and gutters for commercial or residential buildings. Meadowlark Exteriors focuses on fine craftsmanship and proves that in their attention to detail. They offer free roof inspections and estimates and insurance claim assistance, serving the Lincoln and Omaha surrounding areas. Call today at 402-875-2956 or go to meadowlarkexteriors.com.
Nebco is hiring CDL drivers for Ready Mixed Concrete, Husker Concrete, and Beatrice Concrete. Nebco offers great pay, medical and retirement benefits, paid time off, and we pay for CDL training. Apply today to earn an average total compensation of $50,000 to $60,000 your first year driving. From Nebco's beginning in 1908, it's the employees that have formed the company's solid foundation. Start your career today. Visit nebcoinc.com. That's NEBCOINC.com.
Wall to Wall Wine and Spirits is your place in North Lincoln to go for all your needs in wine, spirits, and beer. They also have a large variety of cigars in their walk-in humidor, and they have a top-notch walk-in, temperature-controlled, high-end wine room. Plus, you can enjoy free samples from their tasting bar. There's only one place to go for all your needs for spirits and cigars: Wall to Wall Wine and Spirits on North 27th Street in Lincoln.
Do you need motivation to get to the gym on the weekend or even in general? Tune into the Movement Hour each Saturday from 10 to 11 a.m. Movement Academy owner Robert Kuhlman will host the show as he introduces new ways to stay in shape. The Movement Hour every Saturday morning from 10 to 11 a.m. on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
If you're a homeowner or a business owner, you have a lot of projects, and no one has an unlimited budget or time. Sunbelt Rentals makes all jobs less stressful with no need to purchase large equipment or hire a crew. You can do it yourself with rentals in everything from aerators and power rakes for spring yard work to stump grinders, concrete mixers, tile saws, and more. Check out their inventory in Lincoln, north of Cornhusker Highway on 56th Street, or online at sunbeltrentals.com.
This is Coach Bill Bush. You all know my passion for Nebraska. Having coached all over the country, I can honestly say there is no place like Nebraska. You know where there's also no place like? Midwest Bank. Midwest Bank has proudly served Nebraska for over 70 years, and they're located in 9 different communities. Midwest Bank is ready, willing, and able to meet all your personal, business, and agriculture needs. Your community, your bank, and mine, Midwest Bank. Find out more at Midwest Bank. Member FDIC.
Now back to On the Block with Strick and Austin on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Wrapping up hour one of On the Block on a windy, blustery, slightly rainy Wednesday here in the capital city. If you need to pick me up, come stop by the mill. Fresh, hot, warm coffee for you, and iced if that's still your thing. It's still nice outside. Plenty of Lincoln locations, one in Omaha, but hey, we're here at 11th and O, 1040 O Street to be exact. Please stop in. Please say hi. I'd love to see you. And hey, you might get a shout out on air if that's the sort of thing you're interested in. Major League Baseball here, really quick. Still no score between the Royals and the Blue Jays as they head to the bottom of the 4th inning. Kansas City looking to win its first rubber match all year. Yeah, for having such a good record in tied series, Royals haven't necessarily found a way to get over the hump, right, in these 3 or 4 game sets. So they're looking to do that against Toronto today. A couple interesting things from Major League Baseball last night. First of all, biggest brawl of the season so far in Milwaukee. The Brewers and the Rays, you know, those traditional rivals in Milwaukee and Tampa Bay. I say, tongue firmly planted in cheek. We get 4 suspensions from that game, 3 from the Brewers and 1 from the Rays. So Jose Siri hits a tank moonshot. I think it was the furthest home run hit yesterday, 450-some feet off of, I'm pretty sure it was still Freddie Peralta at that point. Peralta comes up and in and hits him and gets ejected. Later in the game, Siri grounds out, and he starts having words with Abner Uribe, who was playing first base there for the Brewers, and a scuffle ensued. Uribe definitely swung first. I don't know if he spoke first necessarily. I don't know if he instigated it. He made some pretty solid contact with his right hand to the left side of Siri's face. It was more of a slap than a punch, right? We see football players, you know, swing at helmets all the time. Guess what? Baseball players do the same thing, and I still don't think it's smart. But Uribe made contact with him in full-blown scrap, full-blown sort of baseball brawl, which I don't really get. None of these guys are good fighters, right? Like, just stop trying to be hockey. Get out of your feelings. It's really not that big a deal. I don't think Peralta intentionally hit Siri at that point. It was a 3-0 count. I think he just legitimately lost control. And even the umpire, when he was asked by the pool reporter, didn't have a great explanation for why Freddie Peralta was ejected after that pitch, because why do you plunk a guy 3-0? If you're going to plunk him, you just go do it first pitch of the at-bat. It's not like the other 3 pitches were all high and tight inside. Like, he was trying to hit him and finally got it on the 4th pitch. So I didn't understand the Freddie Peralta suspension, and he got the second longest suspension, 5 games and a fine, which, of course, as a starting pitcher, basically he just misses his next start is essentially what that comes down to. Manager of the Brewers, you might have heard Nick say, Pat Murphy, 2-game suspension and a fine, mostly for the arguing, the conduct unbecoming, essentially, as MLB would phrase it. Uribe got 6 games for hitting Siri and really inciting the brawl, and Jose Siri got 3 games suspension as well as a fine. If that wasn't enough excitement for you in the late afternoon, one of the nightcaps, you have, I believe, the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks playing at Chase Field in Arizona. They had to stop the game because there was a swarm of bees on the netting behind home plate. Now, when I first heard this, my first thought was, oh, for them to have to stop the game, it must be like down low, right at the base of the netting, the backstop where they intersect. No, this was all the way up on the top of the netting with one of the cross wires hanging it to the press box. A whole lot of bees, very many bees. But the hero, the beekeeper that came, made a 45-minute drive in 30 minutes. Didn't get pulled over, didn't get a speeding ticket, and, hey, he kept a baseball game from having to get postponed because officials from the Diamondbacks said they were really close to having to call that game just to deal with this bee problem, which I've never heard of before, right? You see the bee balls every so often. You get the occasional cat on the field, which is always hilarious. Squirrels come and go, birds absolutely. But to get that close to stopping the game over a cloud of bees, I mean, man, that one I wouldn't have seen coming. So, hey, a tip of the cap here that I have on to the beekeeper that came in on short notice. He was on the clock. Didn't know Major League Baseball teams had beekeepers on retainer for situations like this. But hey, I'm glad the Diamondbacks did. Let's throw it to break. And when we get back, we will dive into Nebraska men's basketball. A lot going on in the world of Husker hoops. We'll start with Braxton Mia, his addition, what it could mean for Nebraska, some possible lineups the Huskers could throw out there under Fred Hoiberg. We'll talk Nebraska in its multi-team event. Nebraska's going back out someplace warm and sunny. We'll tell you about that. And then also the opponents release. Who does Nebraska host? Who does Nebraska go to? And who are their 3 opponents that they will play twice next year? I'm Austin Oerman. No Strick today. That's all right. Come back with me here in just a few minutes here on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Now hiring for all positions, with laborers starting at $23 and up based on experience. Constructors has immediate job openings for laborers, mechanics, bridge builders, operators, and drivers. Start your new career today. Constructors offers great pay, health, dental, and vision insurance, paid time off, paid holidays, and so much more. Join the crew today and be a part of Nebraska's oldest paving company dating back to 1908. For a complete list of openings and to apply online, visit constructorslincoln.com.
It's getting nicer outside, but it's still hit or miss in the spring on golf weather. Not at Double Eagle Golf. You're home for always 72-degree weather with no wind. Book a bay with some friends for a weekend or come by for golf and happy hour on a weekday. Spring leagues are underway, but stay tuned for info on indoor golf tournaments and book your bay for after the spring game in late April. That's all at Double Eagle Golf inside the Kinetic Sports Complex on West O Street. Online at doubleeagle.golf. Spring is a time of new beginnings and trying new things. If you haven't tried Fuhrer's cheese spread yet, the time is now. For parties for St. Patrick's Day and Easter, or celebrating the NCAA tournament with friends, there's no better dip to bring everyone together and celebrate something from Nebraska. Get to your local grocery store today and load up on Fuhrer's cheese spread. No event or party is complete without it on your table.
Join On the Block and Old School live from Scissors and Scotch on 30th and Yankee Hill on Thursday, June 6th to celebrate their grand opening. Feel better instantly with a beard trim, haircut, or a traditional shave courtesy of the experienced and professional barbers at Scissors and Scotch. Stick around after your cut and enjoy a beverage in their cozy bar area, and don't worry, there's more than just Scotch. Spend your afternoon with Scissors and Scotch at 93.7 The Ticket, live on location June 6th from 2 to 6 p.m.
Spring in Nebraska brings green grass and warmer weather. but it also brings severe storms which can cause damage to your home. Meadowlark Exterior specializes in hail, storm, and wind damage restoration, as well as roofing, siding, and gutters for commercial or residential buildings. Meadowlark Exteriors focuses on fine craftsmanship and proves that in their attention to detail. They offer free roof inspections and estimates and insurance claim assistance, serving the Lincoln and Omaha surrounding areas. Call today at 402-875-2956 or go to meadowlarkexteriors.com.
Nebco is hiring CDL drivers for ready-mixed concrete, Husker concrete, and Beatrice concrete. Nebco offers great pay, medical and retirement benefits, paid time off, and we pay for CDL training. Apply today to earn an average total compensation of $50,000 to $60,000 your first year driving. From Nebco's beginning in 1908, it's the employees that have formed the company's solid foundation. Start your career today. Visit nebcoinc.com. That's NEBCOINC.com.
Wall to Wall Wine and Spirits is your place in North Lincoln to go for all your needs in wine, spirits, and beer. They also have a large variety of cigars in their walk-in humidor, and they have a top-notch walk-in, temperature-controlled, high-end wine room. Plus, you can enjoy free samples from their tasting bar. There's only one place to go for all your needs for spirits and cigars: Wall to Wall Wine and Spirits on North 27th Street in Lincoln.
Do you need motivation to get to the gym on the weekend or even in general? Tune into the Movement Hour each Saturday from 10 to 11 a.m. Movement Academy owner Robert Kuhlman will host the show as he introduces new ways to stay in shape. The Movement Hour every Saturday morning from 10 to 11 a.m. on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
If you're a homeowner or a business owner, you have a lot of projects, and no one has an unlimited budget or time. Sunbelt Rentals makes all jobs less stressful with no need to purchase large equipment or hire a crew. You can do it yourself with rentals and everything from aerators and power rakes for spring yard work to stump grinders, concrete mixers, tile saws, and more. Check out their inventory in Lincoln, north of Cornhusker Highway on 56th Street, or online at sunbeltrentals.com.
This is Coach Bill Bush. You all know my passion for Nebraska. Having coached all over the country, I can honestly say there is no place like Nebraska. You know where there's also no place like? Midwest Bank. Midwest Bank has proudly served Nebraska for over 70 years, and they're located in 9 different communities. Midwest Bank is ready, willing, and able to meet all your personal, business, and agriculture needs. Your community, your bank, and mine, Midwest Bank. Find out more at Midwest Bank. Member FDIC.
Perch Merch is your one-stop shop for all your printing and promotional needs in Lincoln, Nebraska. They specialize in screen printing, embroidery, vehicle wraps, window wraps, print collateral, promotional products, and signage. At Perch Merch, they are committed to delivering high-quality products and exceptional customer service. Their experienced team of designers and printing professionals will work with you every step of the way to ensure that your vision is realized. Call for a quote today at 402-217-5212 or go to perch-merch.com.
This is On the Block with Strick and Austin. Nebraska Basketball Hall of Famer and 9-year NBA vet, Eric Strickland.
Strickland for three! And you're going to go out of here as the Big 8 tournament champion.
Middle school basketball coaching legend and Duke basketball shooting coach in his mind, Austin Oerman. Coming at you live from the heart of Lincoln, America. On air and online at theticketfm.com. Presented by Nebco. This is On the Block with Strick and Austin.
Welcome in hour 2 of the show. Glad you're along for the ride for another hour or so. Lots of Nebraska basketball to get to here in this hour, including here in this first segment. Of course, the show is brought to you by Nebco. Really appreciate them and their sponsorship here. Nebco and Constructors is hiring for all positions with immediate job openings for laborers, mechanics, bridge builders, operators, and drivers. Join the crew today. You can be a part of Nebraska's oldest paving company dating back to 1908. Laborers wages starting at $23 and up based on experience. Visit Nebco, NEBCO, Inc., INC.com or constructorslincoln.com to learn more. 402-464-5685. Question of the hour is this. As of right now, What's your Nebraska men's basketball starting lineup for next season? Who are you going with? Who are you riding with? Who are you rolling with? Drop your starting five on the text line. Again, 402-464-5685. Or if you've got the stream pulled up, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter, drop a line there. Those both brought to you by Starter Heyman Jewelers. The reason I ask that question, the reason I'm interested in your answer, is because Nebraska, of course, yesterday, right around on the block time, I think Strick and I mentioned it briefly, landed the commitment of Braxton Mia, who will be in his 5th year of college basketball, averaged about 5.5 points and 5.5 rebounds per game last season as a member of the Washington Huskies. So, hey, I guess he can be the second half of the Wilhelm Breidenbach trade, right? Nebraska sends, doesn't send. Wilhelm Breidenbach leaves Nebraska via the transfer portal, heads back to the West Coast to play for Washington. And hey, after a Wilhelm Breidenbach had himself a year. I'm not going to say a great year, not going to say a terrible year. Wilhelm Breidenbach had himself a year. Of all the seasons Wilhelm Breidenbach ever played of basketball, last season was certainly one of them. But Braxton Mia enters the transfer portal and makes his way to Lincoln, Nebraska. He will be a member of Fred Hoiberg's team, coming off an NCAA tournament appearance here in Lincoln, not so up in Seattle. Intriguing ad, starter, definitely capable of it. Not going to put my mark and say he's definitely a starter, but there's intrigue there, right? Especially if Nebraska wants to lean into the too big identity that it found toward the end of last season, mid to late last season, where Nebraska puts Josiah Alec in the starting lineup in place of Jamarcus Lawrence, Alec at the 4, Mast at the 5 primarily. That would flip this year. If Nebraska is going to run a too big lineup again, and of course this is all entirely conditional on Rink Mast returning. Rink Mast is absolutely the power forward, at least defensively, and Braxton Mia is the center. The issue I have with it is that Rink Mast and his advantages are best on offense when he's at the 5. But that is the only position that Braxton Mia can play. Not a great ball handler, really no ability to stretch the floor. He only shoots about 50% from the free throw line for his career, and he does it one-handed. Yeah, no guide hand. Braxton Mia shoots his free throws one-handed. Now, he will dunk two-handed, and he threw down some really thunderous dunks in traffic, off alley-oops, off a dribble for Washington. And we should note as well that he started his career at Fresno State for a couple years before transferring up to Washington. Intriguing piece, definitely gives Nebraska a body type and an athletic profile that it hasn't seen in a while. A true, legitimate, rim-protecting, rim-running 5-man. It's interesting. Washington ran its fair share of pick and roll last year. Obviously, it's a staple in the game of basketball, but Nebraska's offense much more motion-based, a lot more movement around the perimeter, a lot less pick and roll until later in the clock. Washington wasn't afraid to just go into a pick and roll, much sooner in the possession. So I'm curious to see exactly how Nebraska uses Braxton Mia and if there is some sort of a shift in approach from Nebraska offensively, right? It's not going to be a complete and total stylistic shift. I do still think Nebraska sticks with a lot of the motion concepts, as much 5 out as it can run, but that means either Mia's going to have to improve at ball handling and it is passing, or Nebraska is going to play more 4 around 1 for stretches, because Mia is fantastic as a diver and a roller to the rim. I'm not even sure he has an elbow jumper necessarily. Think about who he's replacing in Matar Diop, right? Similar athletes. Diop might have, a little bit of wingspan on him, but Mia's certainly no slouch. Probably comparably athletic, but we saw Diop stretch the floor a little bit. Wasn't pretty. He banked in a 3, didn't look great, but hey, at least he made it. Mia either was explicitly told not to attempt any or doesn't have the confidence in his jump shot to step out and do that. But from what I saw, Washington hardly ever asked him to pop. It was roll, 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 roll. Now, he did it with some pretty good timing. He did it where he would sometimes wait for the defense to turn its head, and then he would dive hard all the way to the rim. His guards did a good job of setting him up for alley-oops. He was top 5 in the country, if not tops in the country in field goal percentage. I believe 77% of the shots he took went in the basket, he dominated around the paint on offense and also on defense. Blocked about 5% of shots, and that puts him in rare air in basketball, but especially in the college game. I don't know if he's so good to be a Rudy Gobert level defender where you can just funnel everything to him. He might still need some help, a guy poking in here or there on rotations. But I think Braxton Mia has excellent timing at the rim, excellent vision to be able to read how a guard or a wing coming downhill wants to attack him. Didn't see a lot of him in one-on-one, post-defense situations, but I don't think that's as big of a problem this year with a guy like Zach Edey gone. Cliff Amore, I still believe, doesn't have a landing spot. Those are two pretty good post-up bigs. Coleman Hawkins is most likely entering the NBA draft. He didn't necessarily post up a lot. So I think Nebraska has its true tone setter around the rim. And that's huge. That is a huge shift in what Nebraska is, at least hypothetically, at least theoretically, able to do. Defensively is where I think you'll see the biggest impact, because this gives Nebraska the freedom to gamble a little more, be a little bit more aggressive on the perimeter, right? Nebraska's 2-point field goal defense was really good last year. I still think it ended up top 25 in the country, if I recall the final numbers. Either way, it was really good. Nebraska defended twos pretty darn well, except at the rim. Josiah Allick wasn't necessarily a true rim protector. Bryce Williams came over from the weak side as a wing, not a rim protector. Juwan had a couple highlight blocks, mostly in transition. Rinkmast defended post-ups okay, but not necessarily known as a defensive stalwart. What Nebraska can do now is get aggressive, go for steals, kind of jab and recover, because I think Braxton Mia has good timing and drop coverage where he can use his length to defend not just the roll man with his athleticism to break up a lob, but also, credibly move his feet on the perimeter. Not for long stretches of time, but if a guy wants to drive at him, I think Mia can envelop a lot of guards in the Big Ten and that Nebraska will see. But Nebraska's defense last year just felt like it was missing something. It wasn't exotic. They didn't create a lot of turnovers, didn't force a lot of turnovers, didn't get out and run hardly at all. So what having a guy like Braxton Mia parked at the rim can do means that, a guy like Sam Hoiberg can be even more aggressive. Bryce Williams, Juwan Gary can get one step closer on the perimeter and say, okay, if you get past me, I'm coming from behind trying to poke it out, but you have to worry about a 7'1" guy who's going to swat your stuff either right back into the floor or into the fifth row. I really like that. Offensively, I think it's much closer to the Josiah Allick dynamic, but Josiah Allick had a better ability to stretch the floor. Josiah Allick was a pretty good shooter from the corners, right when he spotted up. I think back to the shot that he hit against Purdue, the big shot that helped kickstart a Nebraska run. Mia, I think just with his size, his length, his timing is going to be an even better offensive rebounder than Josiah Allick, who after that pep talk after Northwestern really picked it up on the glass. Josiah Allick was a lob threat, but I think Braxton Mia can jump even higher, can stretch his arms even further. There are some real thunder dunks that Braxton Mia threw down. And what I should do for you guys is have you follow at OnTheBlock937 on Twitter. That's going to be the best spot to do this, is watch these Braxton Mia highlights. I'm not going to post them quite yet, but I'll get that tweet ready and up during the break. So at OnTheBlock937 on Twitter, and I will post some highlights from Braxton Mia so you can, come to your own judgments about the young man that is a part of Nebraska's roster moving forward. I'm not sure he's a starter. It really just depends on what Fred Hoiberg and his staff want to do. If Nebraska thinks Braxton Mia is a starter, my guess is the lineup is something like Raleigh Worcester, Bryce Williams, Juwan Gary at the 3, Rinkmast at the 4, and Braxton Mia at the 5. That is enormous pressure on Bryce Williams to shoot closer to 40% from three. And Bryce was a really good shooter this year, right? But to take another step forward, Rinkmast has to be up in the 36, 37% range, not down at 33, 34. Juwan Gary has to be at 33% bare minimum with another offseason of work. Because Worcester, for as good as his free throw numbers have been, up around 80%, shooting sub 30% from three in his career as a guard, I don't love that. That's not necessarily going to get it done. If Aaron Eulis is a piece of this team, same thing, not a good, not a consistent three-point shooter. So if you're going to have a non-shooter running the show as your point guard and a non-shooter at the center position, the other three guys are going to have to shoot at a high level. And that's where I think Nick Janowski can come in. And if anything translates from high school, it needs to be his ability to shoot the basketball in year one. Sam Hoiberg hit some really big threes at the end of the year once he got put into the rotation a couple years ago. His shooting fell off a little bit. Is Sam a 40% three-point shooter? Probably not. Is he a 33% three-point shooter? Also probably not. I think Sam's got to settle in at that 36 or 37% range if he wants to be able to consistently, see the floor and make an impact, because we know the spark plug that he is and he can be defensively, but you can't, if you're Nebraska, allow other teams to clog the paint. Because yes, Bryce Williams is a good shooter, but I think playing at the two and having fewer ball handling responsibilities, we'll see a better Bryce Williams attacking the rim. We'll see more Bryce Williams in the mid post, whether it's, to finish a possession with a shot, or a guy like Raleigh Worcester sets him up there, probably more than likely if you're facing the hoop on the left block, so Bryce can turn over that left shoulder and go to his right more often, or for him to distribute. It's going to be so much easier for Bryce Williams to do that in the mid post if there's space, right? Offense in really any sport, but especially in basketball and football, is predicated on spacing. Yeah, put the ball in the basket, but space is what gets you open shots and easier shots. That's what Nebraska has to find a way to build with two non-shooters on the floor. The other interesting way I think Nebraska can go with its starting lineup is if Braxton Mia is a change of pace big man, he comes off the bench, and the starting lineup looks something more like either Worcester, Williams, Griffith, Gary, and Mast, or maybe even a Bryce Williams, Connor Esigian, Gavin Griffiths, Jawan Gary, Rink Mast starting lineup. And I don't want Andrew Morgan to get lost in this shuffle either. I think if Nebraska does start with Rink Mast at the 4 and Braxton Mia at the 5, Andrew Morgan is automatically that backup 4-man. I think his game is very comparable to Rink Mast's, but I think he the way I've described him, and I'll continue to do this until I see or hear evidence the other way, is that Andrew Morgan is a good cross between Josiah Allick and Rink Mast. Has a little bit longer hair, not Josiah Allick length, but not Rink Mast short. Just kidding. That's probably the least important comparison. His hops are probably somewhere in between Allick and Mast. He dunks more than Mast, probably not quite as much as Allick. He's probably not quite as consistent a three-point shooter as Mast, but can do it from all the way around the arc, unlike Allick, who is limited to the corners. More athletic rebounder, I think, than Rink Mast, but maybe not as much out of area as Josiah Allick. Love him as a backup piece behind Rink Mast, who you can do similar things to Rink Mast with, but slightly different at the same time. I think Morgan and Mia played in really pick and roll heavy systems. And I wonder if that's the way Nebraska's trending, because Worcester looks like he has the ability to operate out of the pick and roll. Not super explosive, but incredible feel for the game. He will get a guy on his hip. He will get a guy on his back and find the right time either to make the pass or to get all the way to the rim for, an off-balance layup, or his timing is just so different than other guys. There's a little bit of Kyle Anderson, whose nickname is Slow-Mo. Is he still with Minnesota? He might be with Memphis. I forget where Kyle Anderson is now. I know he started off and made a bit of a name for himself with the San Antonio Spurs. But the guys that Nebraska went out and got, for the most part, played in a pretty pick-and-roll heavy system. And I'm curious to see if that continues, if that leads to a stylistic shift here for Nebraska men's basketball. All right, let's get into some scheduling news here. In our next segment, we'll replay the conversation that Strick and I had with William Kyle Jr., the father of William Kyle III. Really interesting conversation, so make sure you stick around for that here in just a few minutes. Diamond Head Classic. Honolulu, Hawaii. Book your tickets now, folks, over Christmas weekend if you want to watch the Nebraska men's basketball team. That's right. They're back in a multi-team event. Last year, Nebraska kind of hosted its own multi-team event that was spread out across some days. Stony Brook, Ryder, Duquesne involved. Battle at the Vault, I think is what they called it, or the Cornhusker Classic. No more of that, at least not this year. Nebraska will go out to Honolulu, Hawaii, and the Diamond Head Classic. Really is the headliner of this field. The other teams alongside Nebraska are Loyola Chicago, who is probably the second best team in the field right now. Their head coach is Drew Valentine. If that last name sounds familiar, it should, because Drew is the younger brother of Denzel Valentine, former Michigan State great point guard. They went 23-10 last year, 15-3 on their way to winning the Atlantic 10. The Ramblers will... I still think Nebraska is the headliner of this field, but Loyola is a good team as well. Nebraska will see Oregon State, potentially, a team that Nebraska handled with no problems up at the Pentagon in Sioux Falls last season. Charleston. Now, there's an interesting one. Charleston, of course, just lost its head coach, Pat Kelsey, to Louisville. And probably its best player in Australian Rain Smith, who's a knockdown three-point shooter. So Charleston's got to, I'm not even going to say reload. I think Charleston's got to rebuild. Pat Kelsey was really good. Charlotte, okay, we know that that's where Bryce Williams came from, out of the American Conference. And they just lost Igor Milicic, 6'10" wing that Nebraska was in on. He committed to Tennessee. Curious to see what they look like. And then Hawaii taking part in the Diamond Head Classic in Honolulu. Hawaii basketball, I'm going to double check this before I say anything, but as far as I know, Hawaii basketball hasn't really been anything special recently. 20-14 last year. They went 11-9 in conference play to finish fourth in the Big West. Then 22-11, 17-11, 17-13, 18-13. Last time this program made the NCAA tournament was back in the 2015-16 season as a 13 seed. So yeah, Hawaii is fine, I guess. They'll probably end up with a record over 500, but strength of schedule not really anywhere close to tournament consideration. So just looking back at their schedule from last year, playing Niagara, Northern Arizona, Texas, Rio Grande Valley, San Diego, did play Utah. I believe the home of the Jazz is where that game was played. Did go to TCU and lost by 14, lost in overtime to Cal State Fullerton as part of the conference schedule. So yeah, a solid enough middle of the road Big West team. But that's an interesting field. I'm excited about that. Nebraska, Loyola Chicago, Oregon State, Charleston, Charlotte, and Hawaii. And two more teams yet to be added. So we will definitely keep our ear to the ground and see who the other two teams in that field are. Should also note that was reported by John Rothstein of 24/7 Sports on his College Hoops Today blog. And here's the thing, John. I got a gripe with you. Aren't you sleeping? Your big thing, John Rothstein, is we sleep in May. We sleep in May. We sleep in May. John, it's the 1st of May and you're tweeting this out, which leads me to 3 possibilities. Number 1, John Rothstein's a liar and he doesn't sleep in May. Option number 2, someone is ghostwriting John Rothstein's tweets and posts, which that would be a blow to credibility. So either you're a liar, or someone's ghostwriting for you, or option number 3 is you scheduled this post ahead of time. It just came out today, which is a little funky, a little weird, but hey, do what you got to do. We've all been there. Final piece of news then on the Nebraska men's basketball front. We turn our attention to the conference slate. We don't have the schedule out yet, but we do have the single plays, the double plays, the homes and aways for Nebraska men's basketball next year. And here's what the Huskers are working with. The double plays: Ohio State, Maryland, and Iowa. That's right. Nebraska does have Iowa back on the schedule as a double play. Did take on Ohio State both places this last year, and then Maryland as a double play. I like that. That works. That's fine. That's solid. Curious to see if Maryland can take a step up under who did Maryland get? Kevin Willard, from Seton Hall. Is Maryland something special? Do they have anything building pretty the last few years? And then Ohio State and Jake Diebler. I still don't love that Ohio State hired Jake Diebler, but hey, they did get hot, made a nice little run in the NIT to end last season, and they've been loading up in the transfer portal. So Ohio State is a major wild card in Big Ten men's basketball for me next season. Home slate. Teams that Nebraska will only play once and will only play at home. Illinois, who has some rebuilding to do. We'll see if Marcus Damask gets an extra year of eligibility. Coleman Hawkins seems gone. Terrence Shannon Jr. gone. Luke Goody, 3-point marksman, also gone. Nebraska gets Indiana once, and that'll be at Pinnacle Bank Arena. Indiana, another fascinating team that's done some really good work in the transfer portal. Michigan, Dusty May. Nebraska will face that completely new look team once in Lincoln. Those three teams intrigue me to no end. We're definitely going to keep diving into, especially Indiana and Michigan here throughout the offseason and as we get closer to next season, because there's a lot going on with those two programs. It doesn't necessarily feel like boom or bust. They're all in on this year, but there's a lot of big moves and a lot of big names. I'm curious to see if those coaches can get the most out of those rosters. Minnesota, who the news of the day for them is Cam Christie entered the transfer portal with a do not contact tag. He might be headed to the NBA. One of the better players, a 6'6", kind of two-guard wing for Minnesota, younger brother of Max Christie, who played at Michigan State, drafted by the Lakers. Nebraska will get Rutgers once, and that game will be at home. Curious to see where that game falls. Rutgers, of course, gave Nebraska a game in Lincoln. Rutgers is going to be fascinating. They had two of the top 5 players in this incoming recruiting class, and I have no idea how it's going to go. That is another subject for another time, because Steve Peichel really cashed in a lot of his chips, it feels like, on this year's recruiting class, and Rutgers is mighty fascinating. Then the newcomers. Nebraska will host UCLA in Lincoln, not make a return trip out there, nor will they go to USC. The Trojans, Nebraska will see once in year one under Eric Musselman. They will come to Lincoln. So here are the single plays for Nebraska at home: Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Minnesota, Rutgers, UCLA, USC. That leaves single plays on the road. Michigan State. Nebraska did not have to go to the Breslin Center last year. It will go this coming season. Northwestern. Only one trip out there for Nebraska. No return trip from the Wildcats. Nebraska will go to Knight Arena in Eugene, Oregon. That's getting a new surface. Sorry, Husker fans, if you were hoping for a Nebraska-Oregon matchup on the darkest shaded trees on a court in the country, you're not going to get it. They're refurbishing the floor, and they're putting a whole new pattern and design that's hopefully toned down on that floor in Oregon. Nebraska will visit the Bryce Jordan Center to take on Penn State. Nebraska will go to Mackey Arena. A lot of nightmares in that building for Nebraska to play Purdue. They will go to Washington once, and then will also go to the Kohl Center and take on Wisconsin once next year. So the full list of single-play road opponents for Nebraska: Michigan State, Northwestern, Oregon, Penn State, Purdue, Washington, and Wisconsin. Good look at Nebraska men's basketball here. We're going to take a break. When we get back, I'm going to replay the conversation that Strick and I had with William Kyle Jr. from yesterday. It's a really fascinating conversation, enlightening. William Kyle Jr. gave us a lot of good stuff on his mindset and approach to the transfer portal, on his son's approach to the transfer portal, everything it's meant to their family to see the reception that he got out of the portal. It was a really great conversation. Either listen here coming up this next segment, or we posted it on our social media, at least on Twitter and Facebook. Wherever it is you get your podcast, I highly recommend checking out this interview that Strick and I did. If you can't find it on your podcast, that's okay. I'll play it for you next here during On the Block.
Where will your path take you, traveler? To seek fortune in a new career? Or on a journey to distant lands for a well-deserved vacation? Wherever you go, one distraction could spell disaster. You can change your fate, adventurer. Don't drive distracted. Paid for by the NDOT Highway Safety Office.
If you're a homeowner or a business owner, you have a lot of projects, and no one has an unlimited budget or time. Sunbelt Rentals makes all jobs less stressful with no need to purchase large equipment or hire a crew. You can do it yourself with rentals and everything from aerators and power rakes for spring yard work to stump grinders, concrete mixers, tile saws, and more. Check out their inventory in Lincoln, north of Cornhusker Highway on 56th Street, or online at sunbeltrentals.com.
Hey, Husker Nation, Matt Davison here with 1890. It's an exciting time to be a Husker fan, and to keep that momentum going, we need your help. Nebraska has always been a leader in college athletics, and we're doing the same through name, image, and likeness. NIL is a unique opportunity for every Husker fan to have a direct impact on the success of our programs. Through 1890, 100% of your contribution goes to the student athletes. So go to 1890nebraska.com, choose your sport, become a member, and help the Huskers recruit and retain the best. Go Big Red.
Go Hog Wild Pit Barbecue. If the week's been too hectic to even think about dinner, or your family can't handle one more night of leftovers, then it's time to let Hog Wild do the cooking. Hog Wild's family packs are one heck of a good deal for a complete barbecue meal loaded with all the smoked meats, tasty sides, buns, and sauces you need to feed your family. Order online at GoHogWild.com. Hog Wild Pit Barbecue, 3210 Cornhusker Highway in Lincoln. But don't be late, we close at 8.
The need in our community, if you just look at the numbers, it's frightening. We're serving over 1,000 kids every day. With the passion of our people, I really feel like our potential to be of even greater service to kids and families who are struggling is just unlimited. But in order to have the greatest impact, we need all the help we can get from the community.
NEBCO is hiring CDL drivers for Ready Mixed Concrete, Husker Concrete, and Beatrice Concrete. NEBCO offers great pay, medical and retirement benefits, paid time off, and they pay for CDL training. Apply today and start your new career with a $2,500 hiring bonus. From NEBCO's beginning in 1908, it's the employees that have formed the company's solid foundation. Start your career today. Visit nebcoinc.com. That's NEBCOINC.com.
Sandhills Global is hiring. With their fast-paced, growing culture, they have hundreds of new openings in sales, marketing, traveling support, software development, web design, and more. Full-time roles offer a 4.5-day work week, along with flexible internships in most areas. Career and internship opportunities are available at our global headquarters in Lincoln, Nebraska. Find your fit today at www.sandhills.jobs.
This is Coach Bill Bush. You all know my passion for Nebraska. Having coached all over the country, I can honestly say there is no place like Nebraska. You know where there's also no place like? Midwest Bank. Midwest Bank has proudly served Nebraska for over 70 years, and they're located in 9 different communities. Midwest Bank is ready, willing, and able to meet all your personal, business, and agriculture needs. Your community, your bank, and mine, Midwest Bank. Find out more at Midwest Bank. Member FDIC.
Your business runs like a well-oiled machine. It's important that your actual machines do too. Stern is here to make sure you don't have to worry about that. They provide solutions for heavy equipment and automotive fuels, lubricants, and equipment guard options. And with Stern's commitment to customer service for the past 40 years, you know you have a partner to help support your operations for years to come. Contact Roger at Stern Company by calling 1-800-477-2744 or visit them online at stern.co. Stern Company, where problems meet solvers.
The Mill Coffee and Tea, formerly with only 4 Lincoln locations. Guess what?
What?
There's 5 Lincoln locations now. Oh my gosh. That's 25% more Lincoln locations than there used to be. Can you even imagine a world where there's only 4 Lincoln Mill locations? Feels like ages ago. We were all so young then. The Mill on 11th, located right alongside 93.7 The Ticket Studios, 1040 O Street.
Hey guys, it's Bill Bush. Next Ag Appraisal and Realty has opened a new location in Pender, Nebraska, in addition to their office in Lincoln. The real estate world can be confusing, so why wouldn't you want an expert helping you every step of the way? If you're looking to buy or sell farmland in Nebraska, Kansas, or Iowa, give Ethan Sorensen a call today at 402-380-0432 or visit them online at nextagrealestate.com. Next Ag Appraisal and Realty with locations in Lincoln and now Pender, Nebraska.
Now back to On the Block with Strick and Austin on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
There he is, joining us on the LOVIP line. It is my guy, William Kyle Jr. What's going on, my friend? Thank you for joining us on the block today. I know it was rough and tough. We wanted to do this last week, but I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. And I see you wearing something on your chest that I'm sure you're very excited about, man. And so thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, bro. How you doing?
Doing wonderful, doing wonderful. Austin is over here. He's going to have a question for you in a minute. But listen,
hey, Austin.
How's it going, man?
Listen, I had the opportunity and the pleasure to, over the course of time to watch your son both in the AAU circuit as well as the time that he spent at Bellevue West, coming in initially as a really raw, skill was still needing to be developed, really slim. A lot of people passed over him, and he still grew. Like, he still had more growth in him, and it just kind of was one of those things that worked the way it did. He ended up choosing to go to South Dakota State, which was the best place for him at the particular time, got him away from home, got him focused, was able to work, got with a great team, and helped to propel that team to great success. So as you've looked at his progress, what is it that you've seen most about William Kyle, your son, the third? And then we're going to get into the other part, because we're going to talk about just the recruitment of him as well as the next level, jumping into this doggone transfer portal. But what have you seen throughout his progress that has made you as a father just really to feel just excited and you and your wife, you guys have been there throughout this whole journey. Like, what brought you to this as you've watched him progress through?
Yeah. Thank you. First of all, thank you very much, Rick, for having me on the show, man. Greatly appreciate it. Oh man, where do we go? I would say the most thing that I've noticed is just his dedication and his discipline, for this craft. As you know, my son, his first love was track and field, and he transitioned to basketball pretty late in the process compared to his peers. And during his sophomore season, he was part of that miraculous championship team, of that COVID night where they were the only team playing in America at the time. And then, as we all know, the world shut down. And within the next few days, he came to me and was like, "Dad, I'm ready to make a transition from track to basketball." And I was devastated. I thought he was going to be a tall Olympian in the 800 meter high jump, So with that said, he knows me. We don't have to do anything in the Kyle family. If we're gonna do something, we're gonna go all in.
Mm-hmm.
So I got him with my brother Greg Hepburn. Got him with my brother Mo Williams. Dr. Imselman was helping him, with some of his strength components. And the world was shut down, and he worked. And when I say he worked. There was nothing else for him to do, So that's all he did was basketball, and some more basketball. So he was late to this process, but through a lot of dedication, a lot of hard work, just a lot of focus to his craft, he's got himself to this point. And to answer your question, that's been the main thing that has stuck out to me.
It's been gratifying. Yeah, just been gratifying to watch that. His dedication, his process that he literally honed in on.
Yeah, and like I tell people, especially parents, people don't see, unless you was there from the initial, time involved. They don't see all the work that goes in. Nobody ever gave my son nothing. Everything you see to this day was as a result of his hard work, effort, and the great support system that he has around him, with the brothers that I mentioned earlier. And it's absolutely surreal to be in this predicament right now, and for him to have this opportunity.
Predicament's a funny word because he goes from a 0-star recruit out of high school to a 4-star recruit in the transfer portal. How different was it for you and him and your family the first time through when he ends up at South Dakota State to now entering the transfer portal and getting to play for, one of the bluest of blue bloods in UCLA?
You were breaking up a little bit, but if I understood you correctly, you were asking me basically the transition from the initial high school recruiting to now the transfer portal recruiting.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, man, it's a significant difference. I would say, and I like to use this analogy. When it came to the high school process, you can meet the girl or whoever your significant other, you can date, break up, get back together, and through that whole high school recruiting process. With the transfer portal and the opportunity that my son had in front of him, it was a whole different scenario. The sense of urgency at this level, and no disrespect to the mid-major level, because, obviously this is still Division I basketball and playing basketball at the highest level. But at the high major level and at this transfer portal, just the urgency and just the now business component of this, because, unlike his initial recruiting process, we didn't have the NIL at that time. So just the whole business part of this as well, was just something to take into consideration with the whole transfer portal. And, my son coming out of high school, and I'm very proud of this when I say this, my son didn't have a half a star come out of high school. He didn't have no stars coming out of it. And for all this work that he has put in, shout out to Coach Hendo, Brian Peterson, and the whole coaching staff at South Dakota State. They did an awesome, outstanding job with my boy. And through a lot of work, a lot of dedication, he went from no stars to 4 stars, and literally over 50 schools reached out on my son my son, and 45 of those were P5, P6, whatever you want to call it. So it was something significant compared to the high school experience.
Just real quick too, before Strick jumps back in here, South Dakota State seems like a great developmental program. I know it's on to the future, it's on to UCLA, but you think about a guy like Baylor Shireman coming out of Aurora in Nebraska to South Dakota State, going to Creighton. You think of your son's teammate Zeke Mayo now going to Kansas, right? South Dakota State is developing guys in the mid-major level. How important was that for your son, knowing that he was still raw and had a lot of growing to do, to find a program that would, really invest in him and develop him?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what they did, like I said earlier, he wasn't a sought after kid. He had a handful of mid-major offers, and they took an opportunity on my son. They brought him in. Coach Hendo was very transparent. He let us know from the jump. His body might not be right, to play at this level right away. So they told us initially, we're going to probably be looking at a redshirt scenario. But he got there, he worked, and he worked some more. And unfortunately, his teammate Luke Apple got hurt, the senior big, and he was next up. He was next up as a result of the work that he had put in. And so we literally went from a red shirt scenario to him calling me, "Hey, Dad, I'm starting." So
that's beautiful.
I remember that call like yesterday. It was very emotional, it was something else. But I can't say enough about Coach Henderson. I can't say enough about his staff. I can't say enough about how I always knew I knew these were solid gentlemen. I did my due diligence on them, from the get-go. But this whole process solidified the type of men that these folks was.
Awesome.
Of course, they pushed back. Nobody
wants to leave, right?
Yeah, yeah.
After you put in all the time and all the work and got him where you went, now you want to leave me? Like, I can understand that, right? It's the same thing in relationships.
Yeah, but the way that they handled this, every last one of these gentlemen were a class act. And when William called Coach Hendo in our hotel room to tell him about the UCLA, you could just hear the passion and you could just hear the emotion on his end. So shout out to the whole South Dakota State coaching staff. We had an amazing experience in Brookings, and we love the South Dakota State community.
Dope. Last question I'm going to have for you, Big Will. Listen, I want it from a son's perspective and also from a parent's perspective, because you said something that most individuals won't get to see at a level that you guys, being that you've jumped into a high level, top 25 recruiting level as far as transfer portal, and that comes with significant benefits via NIL. When you're looking at it from that standpoint, and it's multiple perspectives, I just want your perspective. As a father, are you listening more intently? Are you making sure the business is right? Is it about the paperwork, or is it about the fit? What is it that you're looking for specifically to your son? Because for some, it's going to be about the fit. For some, it's going to be solely about the paper. For some, it's going to be about the coach. There's going to be different things. But what specifically were you guys in this process, and how did you, as a father, be the helpmeet? Because I'm sure you allowed him to be, because he's a grown man now, you allowed him to be a man, but like, how did you and your wife handle that from your perspective? And then what was some of the things he was asking of you to help in this process?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Strick. Let me answer it in three ways, because this kind of aligns with his whole thought process of him getting into the portal. There was three components of this. The first piece is those three letters that you know very well, the NBA.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was his main objective for making this whole move. Was nothing against South Dakota State, but from an exposure standpoint and from a probability standpoint, he had a better chance of reaching his goals of objectives of going to the NBA by going into the portal and going at a higher level. So that's the first piece. And what kind of aligns with that is the fit, you know what I'm saying, that you just mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also a development piece to this as well, because he has some God-given talents that you can't teach.
That's a fact.
Yeah, but there's still, from man, and it's something when I say this, bro. You look at my son, this is his fourth year of playing high-level basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say that again.
Mm-hmm.
This is his fourth year of playing high-level basketball. He's still just scratching the surface.
Facts.
So, so with this transition, there's also the development piece as far as the schools that we were looking at. The second component of this is that the actual exposure. There were so many of these coaches that I talked to, especially on the high major level, that they were just frank and direct with me that they just now heard about my son recently, within the last couple of weeks. And the reason that is because, where he played at. So we needed to get him at a higher level. We need to get him at a bigger level where, you can go to ESPN, you can go to your Foxes, you can go to your various media outlets and be able to see him. So that was the second piece. And then the third component, which is, goes with your question. Hey, all these other young men and women are getting paid. Why can't my son get paid?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the mentality that I had, along with myself and his agent. We did some probing, some initial probing to try to get an idea of what his market value was. And in my head, I had an idea of where he was. Let me just tell you, I was initially wrong.
You was on the low side. You was on the low side.
Yeah, I was on the low side. And let me just tell you like this. My son has been blessed.
Mm-hmm.
He's been blessed, and we want to do this the right way. He's got an opportunity that a lot of young men and a lot of women haven't got. And he's really been blessed with this whole NIL piece.
Well,
so does that answer your question, bro?
Yes, sir. You was right on point, and I appreciate it, because listen, I'm gonna let you know when we clip this and send this out, because parents are gonna want to hear this. parents and mothers and fathers and those who are even thinking about considering, all of them don't understand the depths of what you just gave, and I appreciate the knowledge of it. Last thing, he's got 2 years, yeah?
Yep. Yes, sir.
So he's got 2 years. This is this thing, and like you said, high level, but his progression has been step by step, and just continued range is going to be the one thing that's going to get him there. And I'm hopefully that they'll allow, help him in that aspect, because they have like a Jaime Jaquez. Now here's the last question. As you look right now, give me one player or two players that you are looking at to model. Like for me, when I came out, my model was Gary Payton. You know what I'm saying? Because I could post up, I'm going to lock you down. So I would study and watch a lot. I wasn't going to watch Michael Jordan because I couldn't be him. I couldn't jump that high. I couldn't, so I took Gary Payton as a good model for me. For you guys, and where you envision or see that you want him to be, who is one or two players that you're modeling where he's at now and where you want him to go?
Excellent question. From the conversations that I had with a lot of agents, when we were going through the vetting process of trying to decide who his representation was going to be, the comp that they always came up with, and William even has heard this before from numerous people. They always say Robert Williams is when they look at Robert Williams, they see William being a potential comp for him.
I like it.
I also
now where you want to go, like if he can continue to put in that work, that development, and who would you like him to look like?
He could become a baby KG.
Woo! You wait a minute. I like you. I'm about to kick you off this. I like your mind and where you're thinking. That's what I'm talking about. Okay.
Yeah. We're not just trying to get him to the NBA. We're trying to make a career of this.
Ooh.
And as you know, it's a difference. So we want him to have longevity if he's blessed to reach that goal.
Well, I tell you what, he's gonna get a lot of bodies because he's coming into the Big Ten now, baby. They better watch out because he goes to the heavens and he will put you on a poster if you get caught slipping. So I love that about him. Listen, man. Go ahead.
And it's still no layups. Hashtag no layups.
Hashtag no layup. Sauter Heyman text line, and you guys better keep that, man. When every time you see or think about UCLA basketball, William Kyle III, think about hashtag no layup. William Kyle Jr., man, thank you so much, Big Will, for tapping in today, man. We have to get you back sometime as we get into the season and talk a little bit more, because now they're in the Big Ten, man, and so it's going to be fun to see them come here. You guys go there. It's going to be a fun trip now.
I'm so excited for this opportunity. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really, really excited. Really.
There he is. That's William Kyle Jr., the father of William Kyle III, who committed to UCLA basketball. And hey, if you were paying attention to the last segment, you might have heard me say that UCLA will come to Lincoln next year. The one time that Nebraska will see the Bruins will be in Lincoln. So Husker fans, you can get an up close and personal look at maybe one that got away, a guy that I think could have been an intriguing fit. But nevertheless, he ends up at UCLA. We wish nothing but the best for William Kyle III. Really appreciate his dad, William Kyle Jr., hopping on with me and Strick yesterday. A lot of good stuff in there, right? A lot of openness, a lot of honesty about his time at South Dakota State, being a raw prospect, getting his shot due to injury, the development done by that coaching staff up there, and then just how honest the coaching staff was that, it stinks to see a player the caliber of William Kyle III leave. But they understand the reality. They didn't hold him back. They did everything in their power to, get him to stay, convince him to try to stay. Just ultimately didn't work out. So we'll look forward to seeing William Kyle III here in Lincoln. Schedule is not out, but we know that they'll come to Lincoln for a single play here at some point. We'll just put a bow on the show here since we're getting close to the top of the hour. Royals lead the Blue Jays 3-1. Big seventh inning for the Royals, so they string a number of hits together. And then the Blue Jays get one back on a Danny Jansen solo home run off of Seth Lugo. They're through 7 innings, 2 innings to go. My guess is that Old School will be back on the radio airwaves right about 5 o'clock. Strick should be back tomorrow on the stream. He's still recovering from his surgery. Big thanks to Evan Blaine for jumping on our Allo VIP line, and a big thanks to Nebco for sponsoring the show as always. For Strick, I'm Austin. Have a good rest of your day, and don't go anywhere. We have Old School DP and Jay Foreman coming your way right after this.
Garage doors can be expensive. Are you keeping yours in the best condition possible? This is Cameron Hall with Doors Plus. Doors Plus is a local